Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:06 here on this Monday morning. It's O'Connor and Company coming off a busy weekend in politics, which is not normal. But we had a South Carolina primary on Saturday. We got the results. We'll give you the details in just a moment. You know how we were just telling the update on Fani Willis, her claiming that she had no relationship.
You've gotten so good at saying that name. Fani.
Apparently, those 10,000 text messages and everything, the Trump lawyers, the legal team, yesterday sent a letter to the court saying, we think Ms. Willis should testify again now with this newfound evidence. Please make that happen. We got to get Fani Willis back on the stand. All right. To that end, at 7:05, we're going to talk to Joe DeGenova. And then at 8:05, we will talk to Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Very excited about the notion that we will have Fani Willis testimony this week. All that's coming up. Meanwhile, let's get to Saturday.
Donald Trump cannot win a general election. He won't. We can make him the primary nominee if we want to, but we Republicans will lose come November. This is a huge warning sign. We have to stop with the chaos. We have to stop with the drama. We have to stop with the bad sound bites that keep happening over and over again.
All right, so that's basically Nikki Haley's message at this point that continues, that oh, sure, he may be winning these Republican races against me, but he can't win in November. But some would argue that he's being damaged for the November run by having her continuing to run against him, saying things like that, because it gives weight to the whole. See, even Republicans don't like him. And yes, the numbers came in South Carolina. It was one-on-one, and he absolutely defeated her by 20 points and got all of the delegates. But the message is she got 39%. That means for 1 in 3 Republicans don't want Donald Trump. This is devastating for Donald Trump. He's going to win South Carolina, guys. That's not the problem. The question is, does that kind of concern over Donald Trump translate to the battleground states where he can't afford
But we've
to
seen
lose
polling
them?
in these battleground states, and he is doing well against Biden. So I really don't know where this comes from. I don't know. It's just not true.
Yeah.
That he cannot win when we see the polling coming out of it. I mean, Larry, am I wrong?
I don't think you are, especially when the one missing notion. I just laid out the narrative the way it's been put there, and you reacted to it. And understandably, what you didn't pick up on was the missing factor here that you're not hearing from the mainstream media, and that is Democrats can vote in the South Carolina primary.
That's right.
And the Democrats had their South Carolina primary earlier in the week, and there was no race. Everyone knew Joe Biden was going to win.
Yeah.
So if you're really trying to mess around, you're going to vote. And the exit polling suggests that a huge number of Nikki Haley's voters are Democrats.
That's right. That's right. But, it was very funny to see this on the news. The liberals were clinging to this sort of without mentioning that Democrats could vote in that primary.
Not only that they can, but they did. Because the other exit, they kept saying, well, look at the huge number of Nikki Haley voters say that they will never vote for Donald Trump in the general election. Yeah, because they're Democrats.
Right.
We knew that. Now, the argument will go that if Donald Trump is going to win the presidency, he needs Democrats to vote for him. Mm-hmm. And they're right. That's true. The question is, in which state will he win or lose based on Democrat support? If Democrats in South Carolina don't vote for Donald Trump still wins South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So talk to me when we start talking about the Michigan primary or the Wisconsin primary or the Pennsylvania primary or the Georgia primary, for that matter, if you really want to take a southern state. That's where more work is needed. And that's where the work that's where this election is going to be run. And that's where he's going to be campaigning. And that's where, as they say, the rubber will meet the road. Why Nikki Haley stays in, though, one can only speculate. It seems like she's doing it because she's well-funded, and the people who are...
maybe not so much anymore.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But the people who are funding her want to hurt Donald Trump. But yeah, you're right. We've got an update on where her funding is coming from.
Yeah. Should I?
Sure, go for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just saw this article that the Koch Foundation, the Koch Network, is going to stop spending on Nikki Haley's campaign. They say they will no longer spend money on behalf of her campaign. In an email to staff obtained by Politico, Americans for Prosperity CEO Emily Seidel said Sunday that the group's political arm, AFP Action, had to take stock of its spending priorities after Haley's loss in the South Carolina primary. Yeah. So this could signal her exit, because we know that she has been incredibly well funded, and that has to be a motivating factor.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is just she could run again. So building this sort of financial structure could be one of the reasons that she's staying in for future races. But it looks like the time is coming to an end.
I still believe, and I know it's naive, but I still believe that you can be a good conservative, you can be a good Republican, and still have hesitations about Donald Trump being the nominee.
Sure.
And I think that AFP has always had the strongest argument in that regard, which is, listen, we want good free market conservatives in the government, and Trump being at the top of the ticket hurts Republicans down ticket. And so this is more about the presidency for us. That said, when you throw in with Nikki Haley, who I also don't think helps a lot of Republicans down ticket, don't know really what you're accomplishing. And I think that it's good that Americans for Prosperity has decided to save their money for other races where it might do a better job for them. The Club for Growth actually got that signal early on. Club for Growth was pretty anti-Trump for a long time. Both of these guys, by the way, AFP and Club for Growth, were very much in favor of cheap labor coming in from our southern border so that large corporations can, squeeze the little guy and make more money. Which is, the American way, I suppose, except, hire Americans for cheap labor instead of exploiting foreigners for cheap labor. That said, I think even Club for Growth pretty early on saw what a disaster we've got on the southern border. Either that or they've got their millions in here over the last few years and now they can throw it on. But my understanding is the leader of Club for Growth actually had a dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Trump.
Oh, really?
And they're making amends there, the Club for Growth and the Trump people, because they have recognized what time it is. And I hope hopefully AFP does as well. So how long does Nikki Haley stay in this
Well, the
thing?
Michigan primary is up next, and she's still in. So
Michigan, Idaho, Missouri.
She says that she is a woman of her word, and she won't back. But how long? How much longer is this going to?
Well, Super Tuesday is the 5th, the 5th of March, and that's when you've got a chunk of states coming in, mostly southern states. I don't see her winning any of them.
I don't either.
And so the only argument is that she's highlighting the fact that when you put a Republican up against Donald Trump, there are Republican voters who would prefer to have somebody other than him. But then that's not going to change. And by the way, same with Democrats. If they had a real primary process in the Democratic Party right now, and Robert Kennedy was running, he would probably be getting 1 in 5 votes at least.
Well, it looks like the Trump's campaign strategy here is to totally ignore her.
Yeah.
To essentially move forward and act like she doesn't exist. And that's probably a smart thing, because I think Trump can hurt himself by taking her on, and because this will end up being, he will insult her or he will say things that some people don't approve of. So I think the strategy of ignoring her is probably the best strategy for Trump.
By the way, a really fun scene that people were highlighting over the weekend as CNN was doing their election coverage of the South Carolina primary. Tom Bevan of Real Clear Politics pointed out that this was the panel they had. And they, of course, were in complete meltdown. And they were like, I can't believe it. The panel of observers, though, of experts, Jonah Goldberg, never Trump, David Axelrod, a Democrat, Audie Cornish, a liberal journalist, Casey Hunt, a liberal journalist, Anderson Cooper, a liberal journalist, Alyssa Farah Griffin, never Trump, Van Jones, a Democrat, Bakari Sellers, a Democrat, and then way over there at the kids' table, able to get a word in edgewise maybe once every 25 minutes, was Scott Jennings, an actual Republican.
Yes.
That was the analytical team covering
and it was
the
dominated
South Carolina
by
primary.
Everyone but
Of course
Scott
it was.
Jennings.
Oh, Alyssa Farah was right next to Anderson Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
Taking all the time there.
Yes.
That's what you get. And that's why, by the way, you come here, and we appreciate it. It's 6:15.
Join Vince Colonnese March 7th for the all-new Stake of the Union at Bourbon Boulevard in Chantilly. Details at WMAL.com/stake.
So we've been operating here in America since the Trump administration, let's say 2018, I'd say, when Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declared what was called the Pompeo Doctrine. Now, the Pompeo Doctrine said that Israeli settlements in the West Bank were fine, that Israel has every right to be able to, and they call them settlements. It's an apartment building. It's a subdivision.
Right.
But the United States was not going to meddle or put any pressure on Israel, as prior administrations had, to tell them not to, have their residents live there. If eventually some negotiated peace settlement shows up, when the Palestinian Authority dares to actually take that extra courageous step and just finally publicly admit that the state of Israel has a right to exist since it's been there for nearly 80 years, if they can actually step up, swallow their pride and say, okay, fine, you have a right to be here, which they still refuse to do, then maybe part of the negotiated deal there would be that people who are living in those areas that the Palestinians want for their own state might relocate. Let's see. I don't know, but have some leverage for the negotiation. So Pompeo says, listen, we're staying out of it. Anthony Blinken, just where are we? 4 months after the massacre of October 7th, where not one leader, not a person elected to the Palestinian Authority, and certainly not a leader from Hamas, who is still the elected government in the Gaza Strip, not one leader for the Palestinians have stepped up and condemned the terror attacks of October 7th.
They're still hostages.
And they're still holding our hostages. Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State under Joe Biden, tore up the Pompeo Doctrine and condemned Israel for building so-called settlements on the West Bank, basically punishing Israel and rewarding the terrorists with this change of policy. It is absolutely
It's hard to
despicable.
Understand and believe that they're doing that.
It's only unbelievable if you recognize that they're literally on the wrong side of this. And they give a lot of lip service to it. They keep saying, oh, yes, I stand with Israel. But then you see these stories of Biden calling Bibi behind closed doors an F and A word. Right. And on and on and on. And then they go to the UN last week and sort of lobby behind the scenes to have them stop or force a ceasefire.
And then they vote against it.
And then voting against that measure as if they're, it's disgusting. It's despicable. President Trump and Speaker Johnson, of course, both stood by our ally Israel and said that this is outrageous. The demands that the Biden administration are putting on Israel are obscene right now. Just let them fight their war and defend themselves.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the Palestinian Authority's prime minister and the entire government is set to resign right now. Mohammed Shtaya and his government have submitted all of their resignations to President for Life, Mahmoud Abbas. That's the funny thing about all this. They act like they have elections.
Right.
President Abbas, after Yasser Arafat kicked the bucket, thank God, and may he rest in hell.
Yes.
Abbas takes over. He wins election, and then that's the last time they've had an election for president.
Right.
And we're supposed to treat them like an honest broker in an organization that's ready to have their own state. They've submitted their resignations to President Abbas and submitted in writing. And now this comes as the Palestinian Authority comes under intense pressure here, according to CNN, from the United States to reform and improve its governance in the Israeli-occupied West Bank.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
that'll happen.
Yeah, and what sort of influence do we have on them, the Biden administration? Why should the Palestinian Authority do that?
Exactly right.
Right?
Yep.
What's in it for them? They're already getting everything they want from Biden anyway.
They murder and behead and burn people alive, and they get money, and they get a demand that Israel pull out of the West Bank and stop settlement. You're right. What incentive do they have to reform?
That's the latest out of Israel, and we stand by our allies. It's 6:22. What have we got, an NFL update here? What do we? Sort of. So apparently, co-founder of Black Lives Matter says being a Taylor Swift fan is slightly racist.
Good Lord.
California, this is a professor, by the way, which makes it even better.
Yeah.
This is a Fox News write-up, by the way, that I'm borrowing from. Says, why do I feel like it's slightly racist to be a Taylor Swift fan? This is from Melina Abdullah, posted on X. This was posted on Super Bowl Sunday. Who knows? A professor of Pan-African Studies at Cal State L.A. and a self-described Black Lives Matter organizer said that...
Pan-Africanist.
Yeah.
Hip-hop scholar. Daughter of God, womanist, truth teller, mama. That's your full... Can you imagine that on your business card or your signature on an email?
Well, this is who she is, but what's funny is with all of those things, and this is like somebody who was on Jussie Smollett's side,
yes.
and was defund the police,
yes.
and the cops are terrible,
yes.
and we don't hear anything about her. But she said that being a fan of Taylor Swift is slightly racist, and now it's making international news.
Yes.
All the other stuff that this insane woman who teaches students on the state of California salary, payroll at Cal State Los Angeles, none of that makes a headline. But you go after Taylor Swift, you are done for in this town, lady. See, you tell me it's not a conspiracy. I'm telling you. You don't cross Taylor Swift.
She's one of these triggered people, though. She said when she sees Taylor Swift, she said it kind of feels like that feeling when I get when there are too many American flags.
Yeah. I will give her this, though. Over the weekend, as the heat was on, she said, when fake-ass journalists from right-wing outlets turn tweets into news, they spur actual violent responses from their idiotic white delusionist followers. Hashtag Taylor Swift has some racist fans. She makes a good point. It's 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
A good Monday morning to you at 6:37 now on this busy day in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company, where we wake up the nation here.
That's right.
Right here from Washington, D.C. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. And coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGenova will join us to tell you all of the stuff the Democrats are getting away with. Specifically, we'll ask him about Georgia. We'll ask him about the settlement against Trump. We'll ask him about Hunter Biden and the arrest of the FBI informant. Plus at 8:05, Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. So we're going to find out why Commander, the Cujo dog, continues to live at the White House. Tom Fitton's all over that. But, Julie, now we turn to a candidate for the Republican nomination for the United States Senate in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Jonathan Emord. Is it Emord or Emord? I apologize. I'm not good with names sometimes, sir.
It's Emord, but that's all right.
Emord. It was one of the two, and I went that way. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for running for office. Tell me why you have lived a life that leads you to the Senate. What has gone on in your life right up until this moment that says, you know what, I should be one of 100 senators?
Well, I came in the Reagan administration, worked for the Federal Communications Commission during the era of TV and radio deregulation, and then for the last 38 years, I've been a constitutional lawyer suing the government and have the record for defeating the Food and Drug Administration 8 times in federal court on constitutional grounds. And I believe we're suffering a constitutional crisis of extraordinary proportions, and I feel compelled to do whatever I can to save the country. The open border situation, everything that stems from this administration is sort of like the touch of death. They're attacking our lives, our liberty, our property. And I don't want my children not to be in a free country, and I'm sure you don't either.
Well, I don't, and I appreciate that. I think it's impossible to hear you say that you're the only U.S. attorney to ever sue and win against the FDA 8 times without raising the question of the FDA's behavior during COVID-19, and specifically with regard to the shot that and their conduct in allowing it into the marketplace, but then sort of stepping back and allowing it to be lied about, basically, by government officials and corporations forcing it on people. If you were to become the U.S. Senator, would that become part of your mandate there to actually rein in the FDA and focus specifically on what happened?
You bet. This has been the greatest betrayal of America in our history. They lied to us about the vaccine. They said that it was effective and safe, and it really isn't. And they said to us that if you got vaccinated, you wouldn't get COVID, and of course many did. They said that if you were vaccinated, you couldn't pass it on to others, and of course many did. And then they told us that if you were vaccinated, your immunity was better than natural immunity, and that was also false. It's been a massive propaganda campaign that has enriched the pharmaceutical industry at the expense of Americans' lives, and the horrific idea that persists that every child in America should be vaccinated with the COVID vaccine is a real horror. we have to stop this. We need to ban mandatory vaccination, and we need to ensure that those who were victimized by this are properly recompensed, getting back the military people who were kicked out because they didn't want to get the vax, and get back police and fire and so on, and give them the recompense they're due, give them the promotions they're due. And that's the legislation that I'll introduce, and I think it's a priority.
Another piece of legislation that you've said you want to introduce is something that will grant amnesty and immediate release of all incarcerated and those subject to prosecution in association with January 6th. Tell us about why you feel that is so important. And the Biden administration is now going to go after people who were just standing on the lawn on the Capitol lawn on January 6th. And so this is very timely. But tell me why you think that that's such an important issue.
Because we have a two-tiered system of justice that's violating the rights of American citizens who are patriots and protecting those who are abusing our country and really robbing us blind, including even the president. But when it comes to the J6ers, what I've said is if you actually harm, there's direct evidence that you assaulted police or you destroyed property. I have no problem with prosecution of individuals who did that. They're a small minority, but the vast majority did nothing of that sort, and they need to be granted immediate release and amnesty, and I will introduce legislation to do that.
Sir, I'm curious, if you do win the nomination, you'll be going up against Tim Kaine. What do you think is the best approach to defeat him? For some reason, he still remains somewhat popular in Virginia, considering the fact that he has lied to them over the years. He's certainly a different Tim Kaine than the guy who ran for governor, 25 years ago. What would be your strategy to defeat him?
Well, I will show his associations and also attack him substantively on the issues. People don't realize just how closely associated Tim Kaine has been for decades with the Soroses, and that really, if you go on the Instagram page for Alex Soros today, for example, you'll be able to see as you scroll down a picture of both Kaine and Soros together, and Soros writes, "I love this man." He is a bought man, and he is a far leftist who represents himself as a moderate. All of his policies, everything that he has supported, has been an utter disaster because it's matched that whole woke agenda, massive spending. He hasn't seen a $1 trillion-plus spending bill that he hasn't supported. He's totally in favor of climate change, and the climate change agenda, but he tells Virginians that he's going to protect natural gas and oil here. He tells Virginians that he's in defense of the rights of children, but then he goes and supports this whole transgender movement and indoctrination in the schools. He's a hypocrite, and people need to know it.
There it is. If you'd like some information about Jonathan Emord's campaign, go to emord4va.com. That's EMORD for va.com. And it's a crowded Republican field. May the best person win that nomination, and let's take back that Senate seat this year. That would be a fantastic thing to see, Mr. Emord. Again, thank you for running and getting out there, being a man in the arena, and we'll check in with you soon.
Thank you. Take care.
I want to remind you, coming up in just about 15 minutes, we're going to hear from Joseph DeGeneva. Plenty to discuss with him, and there's plenty in the news right now regarding Joe Biden and his criminal endeavors. We'll start with the New York Post. Biden has told a Russian oligarch, or had told a Russian oligarch, the ex-Moscow mayor. You remember how something like $1 million, an extraordinarily obscene amount of money was funneled to Hunter Biden at one point under the guise of the mayor of Moscow and his widow, if I remember right. By the way, that ex-mayor of Moscow and his widow, somehow they dodged the sanctions bullet when Biden was cracking down on Putin and putting sanctions in there after the invasion of Ukraine. The mayor of Moscow, that oligarch,
so weird.
He didn't get sanctioned.
Interesting, huh?
And millions of dollars came back to Hunter Biden. It's weird, yeah. Anyway, during a phone call with Vice President Biden, Biden is reported to have told the Russian oligarch to be good to my boy. Be good to my boy now. His boy, by the way, being his son, Hunter
Almost
Biden.
like there's some Russia collusion going on.
And then a lot of money went Hunter's way. This, according to Hunter Biden's associate, he testified to that under oath. By the way, remember when the U.S. spy community said that the Hunter Biden laptop was
Russian disinformation.
Disinformation, right? And that was proven to be false,
right.
Of course. So much so that the New York Times and the Washington Post, they've said, oh, yes, this is authentic. It's not Russian disinformation. And even the U.S. Attorney's Office under Joe Biden, David Weiss's office, and I think there's one other U.S. Attorney's Office, they have made court filings authenticating the Hunter Biden laptop, saying that the information and what appears to be a lot of criminal wrongdoing is completely authentic and has nothing to do with Russian disinformation, right? That would be the Biden Justice Department saying that.
Yes.
Well, here's the headline from Andrea Mitchell. Ex-U.S. spies warned the Hunter Biden scandal had Russian fingerprints, and they feel vindicated now.
Can you imagine?
They feel vindicated now. And, of course, the vindication is because one of the informants has now been arrested by that same Justice Department for apparently lying to investigators. We told you about this last week. Lying about one aspect of the Burisma deal, which, by the way, I'm still skeptical. We don't know exactly what's going on there, but that suddenly has made them feel vindicated that this one informant has said that is said to have lied about the bribe coming from Burisma.
And the information coming out is not. I don't know. I don't know that that's true.
Right.
There's been very little information about it.
But for spies to shut up, wow, we feel vindicated now. No. You all completely lied about this thing and the origins of it.
Yeah. But this is all they have.
Speaking of Hunter Biden, this is the week. On Wednesday, he will testify under oath. On Wednesday, February 28th, he will testify behind closed doors before the Judiciary Committee and the House Oversight Committee. Well, no, that's actually Republicans wanted it behind closed doors. Remember, Hunter wanted the big TV show.
Right.
Jim Jordan and James Comer, they said, no, we're going to do this properly and appropriately, just like we're doing every witness. We will interrogate you behind closed doors, and then, if appropriate, we will then have a follow-up hearing.
Biden would never have wanted this to be public. He would want it behind closed doors because he cannot talk.
Yeah. But it looks like, I'm guessing this might be, they're close to the end of coming up with their final report here, these House committees, that will then fuel the impeachment process. Because what you do in a criminal investigation is you have the final player show up and testify after all the other associates, the Bobulinskis of the world, the James Bidens of the world. They've all testified. They've all given their story. And now you see what Hunter says and how it squares up with all the other testimony and all the other evidence. And it should be fascinating to watch. It's 6:52.